Welcome everyone to my podcast. Today I have Leah Rios on here with Copacetic Canine. Joining us for the podcast today. Did you see my shirt?
No, I can't. Your hair's covering it. Oh, nice.
Leah and I met each other when I still lived in California. She still lives in California. Obviously, I do not anymore, but we've known each other since 2019. So we've known each other for the last few years. We met through Charade, and we've, pretty much spoken ever since. So, Leah, tell us about how you got into dogs.
As most of you know me for a while, you've known that I started out with Waylon. I got Waylon in your typical, probably not the worst way. He didn't come off Craigslist, but somebody literally DM'd me on Instagram that found out I was looking for a Malinois. I was like, hey, I have a litter. Do you want one? And I was like, yeah, that sounds So I ended up getting Waylon. He was a clearance puppy. He only cost me half because he was like the last one that they couldn't get rid of.
Damn.
Yeah.
Poor Waylon.
That's okay. I ended up learning why, because he was an awful puppy. He was the worst thing in the world. But yeah, so I got Waylon, tried to do sport. I had the intention to, but I was still young. I had like no money. I don't think I even had my own car yet. Like I got my car like a few months after Waylon. And then I met Oscar, did one session with him, but I was also in school at the time and I wasn't able to make it work with my schedule, like the days that he was out in training. So fast forward a few months, I met with another trainer who was not very good. We won't mention any names. But worked with him for a few months. He kind of made me feel like he wanted to start working out here in Southern California, because he was based out in Northern California, and so he wanted more business out here. And because Waylon's page at the time was really popular, he was like, yeah, if you just shout me out, like I'll work your dog for free, like all that stuff. And he ended up putting like a ton of pressure on Waylon, told me that I needed to be really hard on him, that if I wasn't, he was gonna like come up and bite me, and it was just all bad. I decided not to pursue that with Waylon. And then I got a job at Blue Collar. And once I started working at Blue Collar, that's where I met trainers, shadowed a few trainers, and then my job after that was Gold Coast. And then once I worked at Gold Coast, that's like where my career just went.
Yeah. Blue Collar, for anyone who doesn't know, I'm sure a lot of people have seen it on Instagram. It's like the ultimate working dog store. I remember the first time I went to Blue Collar, I was in heaven. Yeah. How long did you work there for?
I worked there for 2 years.
Oh, wow. I didn't realize you worked there for that long. How long were you at Gold Coast for?
And then at Gold Coast, I worked there for about a year.
So tell us about that. How was that? I know you learned a lot of detection there.
Yeah, so that's where all of my like detection knowledge comes from. So when I worked at Gold Coast, I was in charge of the police dogs' obedience and their detection, and then the home protectors, their obedience and stuff, taking them out. With the detection, I started a lot of dogs. I would go and do the school searches. We did a few like what do you call them, like halfway houses, Safeway houses, rehab houses, all of that. Sir, eating my hair. And then like started a few puppies. Like once they started their breeding program, the few litters that I got to raise while I was there, I started in detection as well, like the keeper puppies. That's also where I got Lycan. Hey, cheese boy.
That goes into our next question. So introduce us to your personal dogs. Obviously, we spoke a little bit about Waylon, but their ages, what they do.
Yeah. So Waylon is going to be 9 in April. He was my first dog. He's just a pet now. Really, he's, up there in age, so he really doesn't do much outside of sleep. When we do go out, like for walks or go to the park, it takes him some time to recuperate after. He's just, getting old. He moves slow. Can't even jump on the couches very well.
Aww.
Yeah. So, backyard breeding.
Yeah.
So, and then I have Lycan, who is currently on unemployment. It's just, but he is my 5-year-old working Dutch Shepherd. He's right here.
Hey, buddy.
Yeah, back. So we used to train for PSA. I kind of fell off of that after I failed the ones, like, I think we failed 3 times. And just got like a little bit discouraged and told myself I needed a break, and then just kind of never went back.
Yeah.
But because of that, we were able to put way more focus on detection, and we started off at working at Six Flags. Magic Mountain. We did that for a few months. That was pretty cool. And then from there, just started doing different contract jobs like schools, same thing, schools, halfway houses. We've done some like personal homes. We've done like events, warehouses, shipyards, all kinds of stuff.
That's awesome. So with the Six Flags job that you guys had, what was that?
So with that, we would search like the guests and their bags and stuff, and he would always just do. We wouldn't search guests directly. I would just take them up and down the queue lines. They have like a bag check where they put the bags through metal detectors and stuff like that. And like it would be there double checking those in case the x-rays missed anything. He always got a ton of fines there and some crazy stuff too. And when I first imprinted lichen on narcotics, the very first odor I did was smokeless. That's what I always start dogs off on, because from there you can go to either explosive, narcotics, whichever it may be. So he ended up hitting on smokeless, and he ended up hitting on a gun that someone tried to take in.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That is crazy. What is your process? Say you're just starting a green dog or a young puppy. Take us through that.
So I'll start with like the older dogs first, like a green dog. My thing is I always want to make sure that the dog has hunt drive, that they like to search. And I always make sure that they're amped to search, and we always start with the toy, right? If the dog can show me that I can hide a toy and they'll go, as long as they need to until they find it. Once I understand that the dog has the drive to hunt and to search for things, that they'll do it for, a long time.
Yeah.
Then I'll start introducing, I have boxes, so I always start with boxes. And I like to amp the dogs up for like the boxes. Once I bring the boxes out and I know the dog is like, oh yeah, it's time to search, they're growing and they're looking for the ball. Then I'll introduce the odor and pair it with the ball, right? And eventually take the ball out once the dog's had enough grips. But
yeah, so you do direct rewards to start?
Yeah. So, but I always I spend a lot of time teaching the game with just the ball before I introduce odor.
Yeah, we do it the same way.
Yeah. So I always do that. And then with puppies, it's more so for me like creating like behaviors, right? So for puppies I use tubes just because their little heads can like go in there, and it's really like a clear, like this is what I'm like, a clear picture.
Yeah.
You laughing at Lycan? He just like Lycan just stands there and he laughs at me. So for puppies, it's all about just teaching the behavior itself, right?
Yeah.
And I don't really teach the puppies to look for balls or anything like that. It's I'll introduce them to odor outright, so they just know like, oh, this means, because I always use food with puppies, right? So they put their head in the tube, click, food, right? And they're like, oh, okay, and then they just become so familiar with that odor, and eventually, as they grow, pairing it with a ball is like that much easier.
Kind of explain what you're looking for in a detection prospect already. So obviously hunt drive, toy drive, food drive, all the things that a lot of people that do any work would look for in a puppy. How do you think like the top 5 would be in general?
Honestly, a solid lab would have to be my number one. I think just their typical lab temperament makes them good for like any job. If you have a well-bred lab that's good environmentally, you can trust them around people, everything like that. Labs would be number one. And then I'd have to go Mouse and Dutchies. Of course, they typically just have all that drive that we're.
Yeah.
And you can find well-rounded ones that do well searching guests, people, and stuff like that. But Lycan, for example, I had to stop allowing him to smell guests because he gets so amped up on odor that he nips, because he's just so aroused
Stimulated.
that he help it, and he nips. So I had to not allow him to search people anymore. What's up, dude? He looks hurt now.
Your hair. I'm dead. He always looks so shocked. For some reason, he always wakes up during the podcast. What are your favorite and your least favorite aspects of detection?
My favorite would definitely be like the traveling and stuff, the different places I get to go. I've done some pretty cool stuff. Like I did this shipyard in San Diego. Like I got to search these like giant ships. It's also good environmental training for the dog. It was super loud, a lot of like loud machines, everything like that. And he absolutely killed it. With narcotics specifically, there's typically a lot of fines. Like you get, fines almost every search.
Oh, really?
And, yeah. So there's a lot of wins in narcotics, versus if you do explosives, right? Typically, you're not going to have any fines. So
Yeah.
I think a lot more winning for the dog, like for the handler, being able to really see that your training has, working, you're doing something right if your dog's getting the fines. And I mean, just getting to work with Lycan, it's really cool that I can, that he gets to go to work with me, that he pays his own bills, he can buy
Yeah,
his
right.
own.
At least he's self-sufficient in that way.
Yeah, so I can always justify buying him something he doesn't need because I'm like, he's buying it himself.
Yeah, look at that. That's a good new excuse. I'll have to get my dog's ass to work because none of them are paying their bills. Um, so I'm glad that you brought up that detection dogs usually have more wins, especially with what you're doing. How do you balance that? Because this is something that I've always just kind of wondered too, and I don't know why I've never really asked anyone. Obviously, I've never done contract jobs. That's just not a realm that I have experience in, and honestly, I just wouldn't have time. But especially if you're considering an explosive dog too, how are you just so when you're doing active searches and they're just constantly, not hitting anything, not hitting anything, do you just do training sessions like after so that they do end it on a win, or how do you do that?
So this is something I actually just recently talked with my friend Shauna. She has Asani the Dutchie,
Mm,
and she does explosives and stuff like that. And I think this is where the kind of dog that you have is really, really important, right? This is where that hunt drive and that toy drive comes in, right? Because there are going to be a lot of empty searches, stuff where your dog's not finding anything, but just
yeah,
being able to keep that dog's hope, like, oh yeah, like searching, they're going to find something. On occasion, they'll do like place finds and stuff like that if they have the
yeah,
ability to, to give the dog something. But typically, if you have a bomb dog, that you just have to have that dog.
yeah,
That's where that really high drive dog comes in. Shauna does right now. She's doing all of the Utah Jazz games.
mm,
So she's working for a few hours at a time, and she doesn't put any like. I don't think she puts any like training aids out or anything, but Asani's just at it the whole time. Like she's at the end of her leash, she's sniffing, she's doing all that. So having the right dog, and then just making sure that your training is mimicking what the real life searches is going to be too.
yeah. And I think to add to that as well is a dog who find so much value in the work itself and not necessarily in the reward. Like for me, when I'm doing detection with Kiki, she's already so stimulated just by, being told to surge that honestly that is rewarding for her. Like I'll still throw a ball for her or something. But I don't need to.
Yeah.
She would go as long as I asked her to just because she loves it so much. So I think that's a good point is I think that's a good point is making sure you have the right dog for it.
Exactly. Like looking back at it now, like I don't think Lycan would be a good explosives dog because
Okay.
his like if he goes too long without a find, he doesn't like go down in energy or anything like that, but he starts like relying on me. Like he's just like, oh, okay, are we still doing this?
Yeah.
Are we still, So
Yeah.
he second guess himself. And that's where my training comes in, and I know that's like holes in my training, right?
Yeah.
Like, because when I first, started him in detection and stuff, I was constantly putting stuff out. Like, I never did empty finds. Like, I never practiced that with him, right? And that's something
Yeah.
that I'm seeing now is an issue, right? So,
Yeah. So are you
you're,
gonna do that with your next dog if
yeah,
you get another dog?
I will. It'll be a while before I get another dog, but yeah, that will be the goal.
Yeah.
Or I know how to work on that better.
So in terms of contracting jobs, what are some ways that people are able to find stuff like that, or what are some good companies that you could go through?
So the company that I work for is 3D Canine. I've enjoyed working for them. They've always taken care of me. They just contact me, and they're like, "Hey, we have a job in San Diego. What days can you do it?" And I'll go and get it done if I can fit it into my schedule. In terms of somebody who's trying to get into it, I would definitely do your research about like different companies, because being in this industry and working with a lot of other handlers who have worked for other companies and stuff like that, I feel like just with anything, there are some shady business practices.
Yeah.
I've heard of people sending a narcotics job to go do an explosives jobs dog. They didn't have a canine available, but they didn't want to turn the contract down.
That's so
You know?
messed up and so dangerous.
And it's so dangerous. And they're just like, yeah, well, chances of a bomb being there, it's like it doesn't matter because
Yeah.
one's there, and they find out you send out a narc dog, you know, like you're screwed.
Yeah.
Um, when you do like contracting work too, there have been handlers who will say they'll do a job for this company, but then ghost the company if another company offers them more money for it. So one thing that I really enjoyed about the company that I work for, you're good, dude.
He's so cute.
One thing I really enjoyed about the company that I work for is I can be straight up with them. If they ask me to do a job and somebody else reaches out to me to do that job, I'll be like, hey, this company asked me this, they're going to pay me more. They'll either match it or pay me more.
Yeah.
And that's literally all you have to do. But handlers are weird about that. And so, we've had a few handlers that, so once I got pregnant, I used to do a warehouse for them and I needed somebody to take over because I was getting ready to have him. And, the dude ended up just like, he stopped showing up to the job, stopped like letting them know or whatever, was claiming that he was there even though he wasn't. It's just,
That's so messed up.
yeah. So if this is something you're interested in, having a dog helps. But some companies, if they do need handlers, and especially if they need like handlers in your area, some companies are willing to buy you a dog and
Yeah.
and send it to you so that you can do work. Most companies require some kind of experience. Some companies, like mine specifically, has a course. So like, let's say you want to work with them, they have a course that they hold like a few times a year where you go out to the East Coast because that's where they're based. You go take their school for a few weeks. I would say reach out. I feel like some handlers are super weird about it. Like they don't like to be asked, So, be mindful of who you reach out to because some people get annoyed. But really, it's all about and who you know too. Like being able to get your foot in the door. My friend Amy, I met her when I was working at Gold Coast. She bought a Gold Coast dog while I was working there. She's a private investigator and she also is a narcotics dog handler. And me and her have been friends ever since. And she was the one who put me in contact with 3D Canine.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah. So having someone that you know is always going to be the best option too.
What made you choose PSA over, IGP or one of the ring sports?
So I think it was more so like kind of played the elimination game when I chose PSA. So I actually really enjoy watching IGP and I appreciate the sport for what it is, like the precision aspect of it all. I have a lot of respect for people who compete in it, especially in the high level. I'm kind of a lazy person, so I can never get up and track in the morning because everybody who says that if you want to be good at tracking, you have to wake up and find fields, like I don't have that in me.
Yeah.
Or whatever.
Same.
Kudos to the people who do that. But and then I wanted to do like when I first got Waylon and I reached out to Oscar, Ring was going to be my sport choice, and that's because I followed Sarah and Jess, Hella Dogs, and I think it's Jess Trains Dogs. And they were like the first few people that I followed. They were the ones who were helping me look for a mountain wall before I got Waylon. So they were the ones who told me about Oscar and reaching out to him. So, but then once I learned about PSA, at the time I felt like it wasn't as popular yet.
It definitely was not.
Yeah, so I wanted to get in there before it did. Or I was like, cool, maybe I can be one of like the first people, and thinking this is where my ego comes in. I'm like, oh yeah, I could do this. Like, my dog can do this. This will be easy. Yeah, you're right. Look at this. But I do enjoy just how difficult it is. It's always changing. You have to train for literally everything, but come trial day, it could be something completely different. Like one thing. So the first time Lycan and I went for our run, it was like a bit of a shock. He just kind of like our trial prep looked good. It was at our home field, everything. But something just I don't know what happened to him. Come trial day, he was just not in the right state of mind. He was nervous. He was like, wasn't himself or anything like that. And one thing that we practiced a million times was the down in front of the decoy, right? We did the curtains, we threw toys at him, everything like that. Something we've done a million times. That trial day, they had the trash can lids, something he's never seen before. They hit those trash cans, boom, he took off running. But that's the kind of stuff that you have to prepare for, or really don't even get the chance to, because I'd never thought of the trash can lids until that day.
Yeah, that's happened to me too. With with different types of pressures that I didn't even know were possible, or like different pictures, because obviously when we're talking about a PDC, damn, chug. Okay. um, obviously when we're talking about a PDC, that's the only level that's just clean cut. You know, you have
Yeah.
the same obedience routine, and then you have your three protection scenarios, your three bites. And for the ones, obviously, I know you know this, I'm just explaining for anyone who doesn't. You have the same three bites, so it'll be your carjacking, your courage test, and your attack on handler, and then um, the different protection scenarios. So you get a surprise scenario that day, but you're still able to train for the scenarios. Like, same thing for like the obedience is if you're not reading the rule book, oh my god. If you're not reading the rule book, it's really easy for that to happen. So I mean, there's nothing worse than feeling like you failed your dog and you set them up for failure and put them in a situation that either maybe they weren't ready for or something that they've just never seen, and then it doesn't go well. That's happened to me with Rue, where I thought she was ready for something and she clearly was. The jump scenario, they could use a jump or a tunnel, and then you could send to a passive bite. So I had practiced passive biceps because I thought that that was it. It turns out in that trial, I found out that you could do a passive tricep, and as soon as I found out the scenario, I'm like, there's no way she's biting. She's gonna have no idea what I want, and she doesn't have like, I mean, a little as she got older, but especially then she was younger. She doesn't have like really serious aggression. So if I'm telling her to bite and she doesn't understand, you know, that she's even allowed to bite that, she's not going to bite. So I knew it. I'm telling her to bite. You get 3 tries. So I told her to bite. She like runs up to the decoy and is just like looking at him. I think she might have tagged him. I don't remember what happened, but basically, in short, she didn't bite. She had no idea.
I'm taking private lesson clients right now. Stopped taking board and trains once I was around like 6 months pregnant or so, just because, as you know, like boarding trains are a lot of work. And ever since then, like once I just had the time off from boarding trains and I was just doing private lessons, I was so much happier. Like it was just so much more stress free. I get very like anxious when I have boarding trains because I'm like, okay, I'm taking care of someone's dog, that they're well taken care of. I don't want them like having accidents in the crate. I want to make sure that they're eating right. Like I just get very anxious,
Me
and
too.
especially like hearing all the horror stories and stuff of like people who can't even take the dogs out to use the bathroom and stuff.
Yeah.
I want to make sure that these clients made like they feel good about leaving their dog with me. But
Mm-hmm.
that's also just like a lot of pressure on myself where I'm just like, oh my god, okay, I have to go home and make sure that they're okay. I've never had any dogs like get like injured in my care. I can probably count on one hand the amount of accidents I've had. From like anxious or nervous dogs and stuff like that. But, I'm proud to say that any dogs I've had in my care have always been well taken care of. Um, Also, with the private lesson clients and stuff, I'm finding a lot more success in that in in a way of like I find that the private lesson clients are much more committed than the board and train client. So board and train clients, I always had the follow-up lessons, like the 2 follow-up lessons. I probably had 2 or 3 clients that actually used them.
Same.
Like
Same.
contacted me after. Like
Yeah.
they never used them. You know what I mean? But every private lesson client I have always uses up all the lessons, typically sign up for more, you know, and I think it's just so much better for the dog and their owner in the relationship building because just growing and working together is just so much better for their relationship. And I think it's for me as a trainer to just watch it is a lot more rewarding as well, as opposed to doing the board and train and then being like, okay, here's what you need to do. Because again, I don't see them again after that. They don't really contact me after that. I'll still like check in and they'll be like, oh yeah, they're doing well, like, they're doing good. That's pretty much it. But my private lesson clients, those are the ones that they send me videos. They're like, oh, how does this look? Oh, we're doing this today. Oh, this is how, I'm struggling with this. Like they ask more questions. They ask, and I think it comes from like that one-on-one time that you get with them.
Yeah.
So they become more comfortable with you. You're building a better relationship with them. So they're more comfortable asking questions, reaching out, doing all that stuff. So, I don't know if I'll ever do boarding trains again, but as of right now, I'm really just enjoying the private lessons. And I'm finding a lot of success with those, even with reactive dogs and, behavioral cases.
I definitely agree in terms of what's more rewarding. And we had the same experience. I mean, company wide, not just with me, is a lot of the times people never use their follow up lessons. And in two ways, I think that that could one attest to the quality of training they got to where they don't feel like they need to do the follow up. But again, then maybe a year later you hear about, they're like, okay, my dog has X, Y, and Z issue now. And I'm just like, okay, well, it's been a year since you did the training. So, I mean, if you want, you could do some lessons. I agree it's more rewarding in private lessons to see progress. And I feel like I always get a lot more like appreciation from private lesson clients
Yeah.
because again, like I just think you're building, a stronger relationship in that way. And a lot of the times, obviously I've had some amazing board and train clients, but I feel like the testimonials I get that are like 3 pages long, a lot of the times are, from the lesson clients because I just think it makes it a little bit more special to them because they're actually doing it with you, once a week for however many weeks. Yeah, when I first started working again, which was recently after having the baby, the thought of taking board and trains on was so stressful for me. It was just like really mentally draining to even think about it. It was something I had a lot of anxiety over because for the last, I think I stopped working maybe when I don't remember when I took my last board and train. Maybe I was like 7, 8 months. I don't remember.
Yeah,
Um,
I remember you being, because
yeah,
I remember telling you like, God damn, you're still working. Like,
yeah, it was pretty late. So having that time off, especially just really enjoying being a mom, it takes a lot of mental strength to like go back to work. I think, a lot of people have different experiences. A lot of people are really ready and excited to go back to work, and that's fine. I just think it really just depends how you feel individually. For me, I did not want to go back to work at all. And that's
yeah,
just how I felt. I don't know how you felt, but it was just really overwhelming to me to one, obviously I have 9 dogs of my own. So like I had hardly had time for them for the last few months just because I was so sick with my pregnancy and we all do the best we can, but at the end of the day, you can't compare what they're doing, pre-pregnancy to during and then post. Obviously, I know that you could relate. How has it been for you and what tips would you have for anyone that's pregnant or maybe has a newborn on balancing being a mom with having dogs with work?
um, so I think being on like social media and stuff on Instagram specifically, and seeing there are a lot of like really dedicated dog handler, you know, moms out there, right? Who have their laying their tracks with their kid on their back and everything like that. And I applaud that because for me personally, like once I had him, I really only wanted to focus on him. Like I had no desire to take my dogs out. Outside of
Same.
going to like the park and doing stuff like that. That I love doing because I love taking him out and stuff. But like, setting time, to go and train and to go do detection and to go leave for contract jobs and stuff like that. I had zero desire to do that because I really just wanted to stay with him. And it's taken me a few months to kind of get myself into like, no, but I can take him outside with me to go run detection with Lycan. I can take him to go, work on positions and and I say Lycan specifically just because again, Waylon sleeps all days.
Yeah.
So I've just recently started doing more stuff with Lycan, like with Elio included and everything like that. But I also felt like a lot of pressure, right? And this is just all in my own head, right? Because nobody was like, "Oh my God, you're not doing stuff with your dog," like nobody was saying that. But in my head, I'm like, I'm seeing all these other moms doing this stuff, and I'm like, man, why can't I do this? Why can't I bring myself to go and take Lycan out and do stuff that's more fulfilling for him? But then as Elio grew and everything like that, I'm like, you know what? Like he's so little for so long. I can't imagine being like I didn't spend enough time with him. You
Yeah.
know, and especially like I mean, we've talked about it, like I literally cried seeing one of JJ's videos and how small he is compared to him and I'm like, dude, like that tiny squishy like little alien baby's already gone. Now I have this screaming little monster that wants to eat my hair all the time, and I'm very glad that I stayed with him. I'm very glad that I dedicated all of those first months to him because it goes by so fast.
Yeah.
You
It
know, so
really does fly by.
Yeah, like I don't feel guilty that Lycan didn't do anything for a few months, you know? Sorry he, got the back burner for a little bit. He wasn't not getting out or anything like that. But at the end of the like or not even at the end of the day, as like from now on, like, Elio's always gonna be my priority. No
Yeah.
matter, you know. And I'm gonna work my dogs around his schedule.
Felt the same way too, and I felt a lot of guilt for feeling that way, especially at first, because honestly I loved, well, I still do, but like love the dog so deeply that I didn't know it was possible to love something more than I had already loved my dogs, and then I had a baby, and then obviously it's just, 100 times over. And I remember it took me a few weeks to like I felt bad because I didn't want anything to do with the dogs.
Yeah.
um it was temporary, and like I was able, John was a huge help because obviously he could just work them for me, so they're still doing something. So I was able to have that to where I was just focusing on the baby, and then on the other side of it, John was still helping a lot with them just in terms of work. So if it weren't for that, I would have probably felt worse. But I definitely felt a lot of guilt for my lack of desire to want to do things with them in that capacity. And I
Mhm.
would say after like probably a month, it started getting better to where, JJ was getting bigger. And obviously I had a C section, so I couldn't do anything even if I wanted to. It was a brutal recovery. But as, the weeks went on, I started to actually want to be involved with the dogs more. I guess from here it would only be more as the babies get older, because you're just able to include them into more of your
Yeah.
daily activities, regardless of what you're doing. But yeah, I completely relate to you on that. It's definitely finding a balance and just making sure that what you actually want is being fulfilled, which in both of our cases is just focusing on the baby. And I think we had this conversation about moms going back to work, or did I have that with someone else?
No, yeah, that was us.
Yeah, like I when until you're a mom, you don't think about these things really. Like you hear people complaining about how in this country maternity leave sucks. You just like, okay, it's something you hear about, whatever. It doesn't really apply to me, so like I'm not going to put too much thought into it. The idea, even so, JJ just turned 3 months. How old is Elio?
Elio just turned 7 months.
Okay, so like, I mean, I'm sure you probably still feel the same way, but I could not imagine in any universe even sending a 3 month old to daycare. And obviously,
Absolutely.
I'm really grateful to have that to where I don't have to. Um, working board and trains at home, I pretty much work from home, and obviously John works. If I couldn't. Like, I think I'd rather be homeless and send my baby to daycare.
Hi. Hi.
Bye. So yeah, I definitely feel for all the moms out there who maybe aren't as lucky or aren't able to be in that situation.
Yeah. No, I mean, right now, I only have a handful of private lesson clients, and I'm gone for maybe 2 hours. And as soon as I'm done, I'm like racing back home to get
Yeah.
to. I can't imagine working a full 8 hours, 5 days a week, being away from him, even though he's kicking me and yelling at me.
What are your short and long term goals for the business, for your detection career, for really just your in general?
So short term, I am actually gonna start looking for someone to I want to hire someone on who wants to maybe do board and trains. That way when
Awesome.
I get board and train inquiries, I can, pass them off. So I am looking for someone to teach. Finally I've had people ask me for so many years, and I've always just been too scared to. Like I get imposter syndrome so bad where I'm just like, no, I don't know. I just, you can go learn from someone better or anything like that. But I don't know. I feel like also kind of being a mom is just like really giving me confidence where I'm just like, no, I'm fucking good at this,
Yeah.
and teach people. So I am looking to teach someone pet training, anybody who wants to do detection. I'm going to start looking for some guinea pigs there because for detection, one of my like long-term goals is I eventually do want to be able to like I want to own and operate like my own detection company. I want to be one of the good ones, one of the shady ones. So eventually find dogs, find a few handlers, send them out to do jobs and stuff like that. Teach people how to imprint dogs on odor and all that stuff. So my short term goals here are gonna play out into my long term goals later. So
Yeah. That's
uh,
awesome.
yeah, so that'll be the next step. I'm trying to put together like my little flyers or whatever to post that I'm searching for people who want to learn.
Anyone listening to this is in California, hit Leah up. She knows her shit, and she's not too bad to hang around either. Really fun to drink with, which I guess probably wouldn't matter if you're going to be working for her anyways, but, just want to throw that in there. Thank you, everyone, for joining Leah and I. We hope you have an amazing day, and yeah.